Hey folks, my name is Josh Wade, and I'm really excited to be with you guys today. But if I'm really honest, I am scared out of my mind. And that's not what you expect to hear from someone like me, right? I mean, just based off of physical appearances, there's probably not much I should be scared of. But I'm scared out of my mind because today I'm gonna share some real fears with you guys and overcome them. We all have fears that we've had to overcome in our lives. Some of those start off like really simple and small as when we were kids, you know? For some of us, we were afraid of the dark or being home alone. Or maybe you grew up in a neighborhood where there was like that old creepy house on the corner and your friends would all tell stories about what happened in that house one day and it scared the crap out of you. But you had to pass it to get to your best friend's house, so you'd run past it as fast as you could or ride your bike past it. We all had those. For me, mine was, I was afraid of the basement in my parents' house. I was afraid to be down there after dark. Like, everyone's afraid of the basement at some point in time, and that was my story. We all have those little tiny fears that we've had to deal with and overcome. And it's funny because those fears that we overcame as kids, like they may have been so easy that we don't even remember how we got past them, what we did to overcome those fears. And there's two things that I've found that have helped me overcome those fears that I want to share with you guys today, whether they're big or small. What do you do when there's just that fear that's right in front of you that has you stuck and you don't know how to move? Well, there's two things that I think are really helpful. The first one is, for me, has been finding my why. When I find the reason behind why I need to overcome the fear, when I find the reward that's bigger than the fear itself, it helps me make those first steps towards getting past that fear. The second thing, though, is finding my community. You know, if finding the why and finding the reward that's bigger than the fear gets me moving and taking that first step, it's community that comes around me that actually helps me overcome that fear and really get past it. Regardless of what fear you're facing, there is a reason and a why behind you, the fact that you need to or should overcome this fear, and there's a community that can help you get through it. God's been kind of revealing that to me in the past couple months with some recent stories that I've gone through, and one of those is around a fear that actually started when I was a little kid. I'm gonna fulfill a stereotype right now. As an African-American male, I did not learn how to swim as a kid, and I've had a massive fear around water. And growing up, my three older sisters, they learned how to swim. We lived in a community where we had access to a community pool where they learned how to swim. And right when it was time for me to start going to that pool and taking swim lessons, my family moved across town. And we no longer had access, so I never learned how to swim. So growing up, I was always cautious around water and at pools, but I'd go every once in a while or to water parks to hang out with friends. And my most traumatic experience around water happened when I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the Columbus area, and there is a water park. It's now called Zambezi Bay. It was Wyandotte Lake back in the day. And my youth group from my church, we all went to the water park one summer. And my best friend John and I, we were attached at the hip. We were always together. We got some money and rented like this two-person raft so we could do like the big water slides and the lazy river and all these different things. There was also this giant wave pool at the water park. And me and my buddy, about 2/3 of the way through the day, we decided to, go for it, get in the wave pool. So the two of us were in it, and we started off, when it was calm and it was chill, and it was about, 5 to 6 feet deep, which I was cool with because at about 13, I was a giant. I was almost 6 foot at 13. So I was cool in that water. But shortly after we got in the water, one of these wave sessions in the wave pool started. And these waves came quick and fast, and there were so many people, and we just got pushed further and further and further out into deeper water. And at one point in time, the biggest wave hit, and John and I both got flipped out of this raft. Now, John, he was a great swimmer. I mean, this kid's like a fish. I'm pretty sure he started swimming before he walked. He swam on swim teams in high school and was a lifeguard and all that stuff, but I was not. So, he was fine, and I'm flailing. I'm doing everything I can, and nothing's working. There's so many people, and I start going underneath the water. And there's all these people above me, and these waves keep coming, and it's just making it so difficult, and I'm so scared. And luckily, we were close to the side of this massive wave pool, and John was able to find me and grab my hand and just pull me towards the side, thankfully. But in that story, that experience, it just cemented my fear of water. So since then, I've really avoided it, I've never really gone to the pool since then. I've been to the beach, but it's been few and far between, maybe 2-3 times in the past 15 years. And my story around water, my fear around water, it really got challenged earlier this summer. It started with 2 different people. The first is a good buddy of mine, Cord. He invited me to go on a fishing and camping trip for Father's Day. And I was up for going. It was going to be a lot of fun. I hadn't fished in a long time. So I really wanted to go, and we went down to a state park in Kentucky, and we got a camping spot right down by the edge of the lake. And I was cool, on the bank. I was cool on the shores and just fishing off the shore. And we had a plan the next day to rent a pontoon boat with his family to go out fishing. But he kept asking, he's like, hey man, why don't the 2 of us, why don't we just get, one of these smaller boats? I'm like, no way, man, that thing is small and old and rickety, and it's gonna tip, and I'm gonna be in the water, and it's gonna be no good. And he just kept trying to push me towards it, and I kept shutting it down the whole entire time. So we ended up getting the pontoon boat with his family and fished, for a day and a half, and it was great, had a lot of fun. And on the way back, we passed a couple other places where we could go fishing and swimming. He's like, hey man, why don't we stop here? Why don't we go here, man? You can learn how to swim, I'll help you. And I was like, no man, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So I get back to Cincinnati, and the same weekend while I was away having fun with my buddy Cord, my wife decided to have some fun with our daughter, Lydia. I have a 1.5-year-old daughter, Lydia. You can see a quick photo here, and she is absolutely adorable. And that little girl is full of energy and has this adventurous side that definitely does not come from me. It either comes from her mom or directly from God. She's a big adventurer, and my wife took her to a friend's pool that weekend while I was away, and Lydia had a blast. She was in her little floaty thing and had a lot of fun, and every once in a while my wife would take her out of the floaty and dunk her under the water, and Lydia would come back up and she'd be laughing and giggling and having a lot of fun. So my wife, it had been a conversation before, but it really came up then. She's like, hey, we need to do this as a family. We need to go to the pool. We need to do this thing. And I'm just shutting it down completely. And it turned into an argument between the 2 of us. Because for me, it seemed like everyone was saying, man, it's easy. Just jump in, just go for it. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. I really have a real fear of water. I don't know how to swim. So, the conversation ended, the argument ended. But I just wrestled with it for the next few days, and I had this knot in the pit of my stomach the whole week because I knew that I was missing out on a lot of fun and a lot of adventures with my buddy Cord and with my wife and with my daughter. And I really desired to be able to go on any adventure that my daughter and that my wife want to go on. So I knew I had to do something. So I started looking for adult swim lessons, and I found some swim lessons actually at the UC Rec Center. And it turns out that I walked in the first day for that swim lesson. The guy who was my instructor actually goes here to Crossroads uptown. So it was Lydia. I found my why. I found the reason why I need to overcome this fear. I had community like my buddy Cord and my wife, and then this swim class and my instructor to push me towards learning how to swim. So we started in the lap pool, and it was only 3 feet deep, so that was good. But the last couple of classes, we moved over to the lap pool from the leisure pool. And if you've ever been on UC's campus and you've walked down Main Street, there's that big window, and you can look into this massive pool where the UC varsity swimming and diving team practices and has their meets. That's where we were at the last couple classes. In that last class, my instructor, he pushed us to go into the deep end and try and figure out how to tread water, how to learn how to tread water. And I'd gotten way more comfortable with water, so I went for it. I was the first one in, and I was successful for about 20 seconds. But that class, it gave me way more confidence around water. And I needed it because the very next day, that confidence was tested. The next day, I got a chance to have a fun day out on the Ohio River on a friend's boat. And I had been on a few boats before, but I was so nervous the whole entire time about the water that I didn't even have fun. So we get out on the boat, my friends, they push me, they encourage me. I get on a life jacket and jump in at one point in time and had a lot of fun. And in this video you can see, for the first time in my life, I went tubing, and I got the most air the whole entire day. You'll see this video of me sliding across and would be flung up into the air and falling off. And it was the most fun I've ever had. It was amazing. It was amazing. Conquering that fear, man, that was awesome. That was a lot of fun. But it pales in comparison to the fear that I'm about to conquer right now with all of you. A fear around this talk, a fear of talking about something I don't want to talk about, but I know that I need to. And that is around a struggle that I've had my whole entire life. I've had starting since I was about 13 years old. At about 13 years old, it was the start of developing an addiction to pornography. And that was an addiction that I held onto and kept secret until about 4 years ago. And man, it kept me trapped and isolated and full of shame for years. And it wasn't until I heard the story of someone who I could relate to that I started to find freedom. And then I found community. And the same reason that I found freedom in hearing someone else's story and finding community is the same reason I can overcome my fears. So that's why I'm sharing this with you guys today. I know that addiction, it started, when I was young, just innocently. It was images and clothing catalogs, but it progressed really quickly to more sexual images and eventually internet pornography. I knew it was wrong all along, but it was a secret that I just hid and buried. And keeping it hid just only allowed that secret and that shame to grow. Around 4 years ago, about 4.5 years ago, I was volunteering at our Oakley site in a group for young adults, and I was helping new folks get engaged in this community. And there was a kickoff for the new community group season. So they invited all the leaders in to kind of have a fun time and get encouraged. And Chuck Mingo actually spoke at that event. And, I didn't really know Chuck, but I'd seen him speak on the weekends, and I thought he was awesome, and I always got a lot from him. So I was excited to hear from him. And he gets up there and he starts talking, and about 2 minutes in, he starts sharing his story, and it was a punch to the gut. Chuck shared his story about how he developed an addiction to pornography and a sexual addiction when he was around 12 or 13 years old. How it progressed through high school and into college and even after college. And it just hit me, right in the gut because I had the same exact story. And here's this guy that I looked up to, and he was just like me. We both had the same issues. And I heard how he found freedom and healing in a community group at Crossroads. And that's why he was there speaking to encourage all of us. And I knew that I had to find that same freedom. I had to find that same community. So about a few weeks later, maybe a month or so later, I walked down the hallway in Oakley towards this room. And the whole entire way, man, I'm trying to make myself as small as I possibly can, which is impossible. So I'm walking down this hallway, shoulders hunched over, head down, and I walk into the room, and immediately one of the leaders walks right up to me, and he could just tell by everything that I was brand new. And, he literally just kind of got right up in my face and was like, "Hey, man, welcome." And he introduced himself. And he's like, "So glad you're here, man. Way to go for making the steps into this room." At that point in time, I was able, lift my head a little bit and got a little more courage just from his encouragement there. And I went to go find a seat. And as I'm walking to find a seat, my eyes are kind of up and I'm looking around the room. And immediately I lock eyes with this guy. And it was a friend that I had known at UC when I was in school. We had known each other in school, and we hadn't seen each other in a while. I'd seen him around Crossroads a few times, but never really got to talk. And he's sitting right there. And it was like, oh my goodness. So I go and I sit down right next to him, and we talk and we start chatting. And I don't even know if it was that same day or within the next couple of weeks. I'm sitting there talking to him one day, and another guy who I know, who was in the community group that I just came from, he was leader as well, walks into the room as well. And we lock eyes, and the three of us started this small group, and eventually we progressed into a closed group. And there were so many other guys around that same point in time who found freedom because Chuck actually shared his story, not just in a community group, he shared it from stage a few months after that. And there were so many men who I knew who made the choice to walk into that room over the next few months. In the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to sit in two different groups, two different closed groups, one that lasts for about 2.5 years, and then one that's been going for about 1.5 years now. And I've been able to find a whole lot of freedom through that group. I've been able to uncover some of the sources and the reasons behind my addiction and start to overcome them as well. And I've been scared to share this story for so long, but it's actually that community group and the stories I hear every single week and every single day is why I'm sharing this story. It's knowing where I was at 4 years ago is why I'm sharing this story. I know there are guys in this room, I can guarantee there are men in this room who are struggling with this right now. I can guarantee that there's women in this room who are struggling with pornography and sexual addiction. The statistics are pretty equal across the board now. There are relationships, whether dating or engaged or married, where you're wrestling with this and it's affecting your relationship right now. And you need to hear the story. You need to find some hope. You need to find some freedom. So I want to share some of that stuff with you today. The first thing I had to learn in recovery is that it's actually not about sex. It's very rarely about sex. Pornography, like alcohol or heroin or any other drugs, is just something we use as medicine to numb pain in our lives. And every single time we reach for that stuff, we're actually reaching for God. There's a book that we've been reading in recovery over the last couple years, I've read a couple times. It's called Surfing for God, and the author puts it like this. Almost a century ago, G.K. Chesterton, who was a Christian theologian, wrote that the man who knocks on the brothel door is knocking for God. If he were writing today, he might say that the man who surfs the web for porn is surfing for God. And I found that to be so true in my life. Every single time porn has been the thing that I've sought, it's been because I'm trying to numb some discomfort I'm feeling. I mean, simple things, whether I'm hungry or I'm angry or I'm lonely or I'm tired, I've always gone towards that. And in reality, the only thing that can satisfy me when I get in those places of discomfort is God. And what makes it worse is that each time you reach for an addiction, each time you reach for pornography or alcohol or drugs, the first time you receive it, you get this high, this dopamine hit, and it's amazing and it feels so good. But the next time, that high, that hit is just a little bit less. And the next time it's less, and the next time it's less. So you start craving it more and more and more to get the same high that you got the very first time. That's then paired with, I think, what I call the driver and like the jailer of addiction. The driver being isolation. Isolation is the thing that drives us towards looking for comfort for something. We are designed for community by God. And when we're isolated, we look for anything else. In recovery, I've had to fully accept that I'm loved and known by God. And where isolation has been the biggest driver of addiction and driven me towards addiction, community has been the biggest thing that's driven me in recovery. Getting in community with friends. You know, the beauty of the group that I meet with, it's called Men's Healthy Sexuality, is the relationships I've built with other guys. Each day I work to reach out to at least one guy who I'm in recovery with, and we check in. We share the highs and lows of our days. We talk about how we're doing physically and emotionally and spiritually. We share everything. There is nothing off limits to us in this group. These guys know more about me than my wife does. And they've shown me that I'm known and loved by God and by other people. It's crazy because our culture in America teaches men to be these rugged individualists. We should be lone wolves, strike out on our own, do it by yourself. And that culture, it actually drives isolation and it leads so many men towards addiction. Shame keeps us trapped. And that's the other piece in tandem with isolation that really keeps us in addiction is shame. Now you may be thinking like guilt. Well, guilt and shame are two different things. Where guilt says that I did something wrong, like guilt says that I've sinned, shame says that I am broken beyond repair. It says that I'm worthless, that there's no hope for me. And the crazy thing with shame is when you get into a situation where you have an addiction and you're trying to escape discomfort, you go towards that addiction. So for me, I went towards pornography. I used pornography, and I get the high. But as soon as I came down from that high, I then have all of this guilt and shame inside of my gut. And it would just drive me insane. And to escape that feeling of shame, I go right back to pornography. And I get the high, and then I come down. I have the same guilt and shame and pain, and I go right back to pornography. And it becomes this lather, rinse, repeat cycle that just never ends. And the isolation I'm already facing just allows shame to continue to grow. My group, the beauty of that is, in paired with community, is one of the best things they do is they break shame off of my life. When I'm struggling, when I'm had a slip, they tell me progress, not perfection. You are not the last time you acted out. You are a son of God who is loved and known, and he desires good things for you. They help me repent for the things that I've done, and they turn me right back to God. For years, porn kept me trapped in isolation and shame. It completely diminished my life. I lived life at half speed for years. It was always this thought in the back of my head, like, why isn't my life more? Why can't I do more? Why do I feel like I'm never happy? It was because porn had me trapped in this addiction. I've been able to find freedom through this recovery group, and I've been able to find more grace and more power every single day as I engage in it. I thought I was alone the whole entire time, but what I've learned over the last 4 years is that every single time I sit down with a guy who also faces addiction, I learn that we have pretty much the same story. We have the same experiences that have driven us towards porn, towards addiction. As a college student, I was engaged in some campus ministries and came to Crossroads off and on. And right now, I want to talk specifically to the guys who are college students right now. You may feel alone. You may feel trapped. You are not. You are not alone. You are not trapped. And I want to offer some challenge to you. Today is the day you can start to find freedom. Today is the day you can break free of isolation. Some of you may have hopes and dreams of getting married one day, and I'm telling you, do not wait to deal with this. Get rid of it now. Deal with your addiction now. I'm so blessed because I have an amazing wife. And when we first started dating, we dated for about 6 months. And she knew that I had an issue with pornography, but we never really talked about it. We broke up, and I know that pornography played a part in our breakup. And before we started dating again and eventually got engaged and married, that's when I actually engaged in recovery and got into men's healthy sexuality. And even though I got into that recovery group and started finding freedom before we got married, man, it still affects our marriage. It affects our marriage. It affects our sex life. It affects how much she can trust me. And I know that I have caused her some deep pain and some deep scars. And I'm so thankful because I have a wife who also, as I was engaging in recovery, she started finding healing and freedom too. She engaged in a group for women that is specifically for those who are in relationships with men who have struggled with addiction. And she breaks shame off of my life all the time, and she gives me so much grace, and this has become a thing that the two of us fight for together. I'm not alone. My biggest cheerleader, my biggest partner is my wife in this. I said at the beginning of my talk that I am scared out of my mind, but actually in reality, I'm more free today. I have more joy. I have more hope than I've ever had in my whole entire life, and you can have that too. And that's what God desires for each and every single one of us. It says this in 2 Timothy 1-7. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Those three things. He's given us power. Man, I need God's power to overcome this because I can't do it on my own. Only God can break the chains of this in my life, and only God can break the chains of addiction in your life. I need love. I need to know that I'm loved by God and by community, that I'm known and that I'm loved and that there's people who want to be there with me. And self-control. That speaks for itself because when I don't have self-control, that's when I go towards all these things that drive me away from God. And today, you guys can find all of that too. So I want to give you guys some resources that you can reach out to. Starting here on September 4th, we have an open group for men's healthy sexuality. If you're a guy in this room and you're struggling with pornography, starting September 4th at noon on Tuesdays, there's an open group of men who are willing and waiting to accept you in their community if you're struggling with this and you need help. I also want to point you to crossroads.net/free from porn. On there, you can find a bunch of different links to guys who are way smarter than me, who can talk about the science behind this, a couple different TED Talks. You'll even see articles from places like GQ that talk about 10 reasons why you need to quit watching porn. You'll also find a talk from Chuck Mingo and links to other groups that happen. I engage in a group on Thursday nights in Oakley. That's a closed group, but there's also an open group, which is where I started at on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock every single week in Oakley. And I'm also going to take one more risk and face one more fear. I know that there are people in this room who feel isolated and feel alone, and I want you to know when I say you're not alone, I mean it. So I'm going to put my email up here, jwade@crossroads.net. If you feel isolated right now, if you feel alone, if addiction is where you're at, I want you to know you're not alone, and there's someone right here who's willing to help you walk through that, who's willing to point you in the right direction of where you need to go to find freedom. Let me pray for us right now. God, thank you so much for your grace and for your mercy. Thank you for unveiling the why to me. Thank you for giving me community. And God, I pray that every single person in this room right now who is struggling with addiction finds their why and they find community and know that there is freedom for them today. We ask for and pray for all these things in your son's name, Jesus. Amen. Earlier in service, we learned a new song called You Are Able. And the chorus just says, thankful, I am thankful. When I am not, you are able. And man, I am not able to beat this thing on my own. But I am so thankful that there's a God who is able to. So I'm going to ask you guys to stand and sing this song with me.
Oh, thankful, yes, I am thankful. When